So I just thought, really, I thought, why not start the year? I'm back in the office for the first day today since the Christmas period and stuff like that. So I thought I'd jump on and do a live. I know that the Christmas period can be difficult for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. Family dynamics, from dysfunctional families, with families that we might struggle with the kind of relationships in there, to, actually having really toxic parents, which is, a whole nother level of that. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about that, reflect on some stuff, then maybe do a little bit of a New Year reflection. I'm going to be here probably for about half an hour, maybe. And talk a little bit about inner you as well. And then also tomorrow, I've got the free breathwork session. If nobody's ever tried that before, then come along. If you don't know what breathwork for emotional release is, I've discovered breathwork a number of years ago, and it became like such an important part of my journey and my healing journey. I think one of the mistakes that we make, or one of the things that we do that don't realize the impact that it has, does that make sense, is we over-rationalize everything. And I think so many people do that, and actually what they do is they use the rationalizing of things to come away from their body and never actually have to feel the ways that they feel. I am very, very good at that, by the way. And so breathwork, when you breathe in this way, and somebody's just asked how you join, there's a link in my bio. Just register there. You'll see free breathwork session, register, and then you'll be registered. You'll be registered for the session itself, and then you'll also have access to the recording afterwards, and it's completely free, okay? The only thing you have to put up with is probably about 2 minutes at the beginning. I just talk a little bit about inner you as well. But other than that, it's free, and the reason that I keep doing them fairly regularly for free is because it's quite a new thing, and a lot of people aren't aware of just how powerful it can be. So if you want to come along and try it, and you're watching this, then come along and try it. It's incredibly powerful, brings you into your body. People talk about like life-changing experiences from just one session, and that's not an exaggeration, because it can really bring you into your body for the first time. If I was to describe what it is, I would say that we're going past your rational part of your brain and into the emotional part, and it can bring a lot up. People cry for the first time in a long time. How did I learn myself? I accidentally fell across breathwork because I struggled with meditation. And what I found is that loads of, my experience was that I realized that loads of people recognized that meditation was like the thing to do. And then when I was asking everybody how they meditate, they couldn't really tell me. And I think a lot of people were lying about meditating and not doing it. And then when you asked them how to do it, they couldn't really tell you. So I was trying all this different stuff. And look, when I try and just meditate, just close my eyes and be in my head's really, really loud. And so breathing in the way that I do goes, really, really helps with that. And then I went and trained with a guy called John Paul Crimmy. I say went and trained, I trained with him online. He's in America. And the rest is history. I've been sort of teaching breathwork as in delivering breathwork sessions for, a couple of years now. So yeah, a lot of people struggle with the meditation thing. And like I say, because everybody, kind of knows that it's the thing to do, everybody says that they're doing it. And when you ask them how they do it, they can't really describe it. So breathwork is an amazing way to do it. That's why I'm offering it for free. That's why I want you to come and try it. If you can't make the live session, then do register and make sure you watch a recording and have an amazing experience. So that's the breathwork thing. And then just quickly as well, I'll tell you, Inner You starts on the 9th, which is next week. That's like a 6-week program. There's lots of breathwork that's involved in that, but I also get you to do some weekly exercises. And then there's a live space once a week where we come together and kind of talk about the stuff that the work that you've done in the week. And look, you can see my review page if you go on my link in my bio, and you'll see people that have reviewed it. It's £99. I think that's really, really fair. I think I see a lot of people doing the work that I do, and then they bring out programs in this way, and they're charging loads and loads of money for them. And I really, really want people to be able to access it. So I think there needs to be a fairly large investment so that people feel invested in it. But I don't want to make it crazy and unreachable. Somebody's asking if breathwork can be good for panic attacks. Yes, it can. It can be quite scary, if you suffer from panic attacks, but it can definitely help. It's not for everybody. It's like everything. It's not for everybody. There's no one size fits all here. But definitely, I believe it can be really good for people with panic attacks. £99 is for Inner You, which is the 6-week course. Yeah, it's £99. And you get access to the whole 6 weeks. There's 6 live sessions. And then you get access to the whole thing for a further 12 weeks. So there's all the breathworks in there as well. So, yeah. Then I wanted to just talk. That's Inner You and the breathwork stuff anyway. So that's what's going on in my world this week and next week. Inner You starts next week. The breathwork is tomorrow. If you're not sure, if you want to join Inner You, and some people are in here now. Laura's saying Inner You is incredible. I've not paid Laura to be in here. Honestly, it's something that I'm really proud of, and I poured a lot of love, sweat and tears into it. And I'm really sort of proud of how people can use it. How did I celebrate New Year's Eve? I went to bed at 9:30 and then got up at 12 when all the fireworks were going off and waking my dog up. But I've never done New Year's Eve. I've never done it. Even in my past life, I never particularly liked it. Can I do breathwork if I have inflammation on the brain? Probably not advised. I would speak to a professional about it, but I would probably advise no. Yeah, I hope it's good value for money. I think it's, I wanted to make it accessible as it didn't feel right to me to do it and then charge loads and loads of money for it. I did a little bit of Al-Anon years ago. I've never been to ACA. Do you have an online breathwork course? I'm in New Zealand. Yeah, Inner You is like, breathwork is at the heart of Inner You, so I'd come along and do that. So yeah, look, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I was going to start actually by saying, I've set some little things that I want to achieve this year at the beginning of this year. Like, we live in this society now. Let me just read this. Hey, just joined, but I sent you a message already doing some work with Nakoa, but I don't think you've seen it. Would love to get involved. Can you send me it again so it comes to the top and then I'll have a look? Inner You has changed my life for the better. Highly recommend. Amazing. And we live in this world now where it's like you either got to hate New Year's resolutions or you love them and set them. And like, I always think it's a good opportunity to kind of reset and relook at the way that I approach things. And look, I think when I look at like what people are calling healing journey, and when I look at the ways in which healing is presented online, I sometimes feel a little bit lost myself when I look at it. And I think sometimes that what happens is that we all kind of recognize and understand that we want to be on this healing journey rather than this kind of self-destructive journey. But then if we're not careful, we rehash what was our self-destructive journey, or we rehash some of our behaviors as if they're our healing journey. And I think one of the common things that happens for a lot of people, and it certainly did for me, is everybody, like, there's this belief that if you do the healing work, right, then you'll be all about kind of love and compassion and empathy, and like you'll find a way to be able to love everybody. Now, I do think that there is an underlying truth in that. However, I don't think that should be mistaken for allowing people to treat you in any way that is hurtful for you. And so in my online space, my online community space called Breathing Space, which is another place where you can go and do some breath work, and we do regular weekly sessions, we were actually talking in there about stepping into our power a lot this year. And what does stepping into our power mean? Look, I think it's the ability to be able to step into my power is to be able to navigate in the world in a way that works for me. I think a lot of people struggle with this. I think a lot of people struggle with this because we get caught up in this people pleasing. So like I've always been a chronic people pleaser. Yeah, I've always been somebody who chronically wants to be loved and liked by everybody, right? And so what I did when I first stepped into my healing journey is I carried on and continued to do that, but I did it in this new disguised way. I'm this guy who's on my healing journey, and so I'm just going to love everybody and respect everybody. But doing that with no boundaries gets you hurt. right? And I think what we have to do is be truthful, realistic, and honest too, right? And so the reality is that the world is a hard and difficult place to navigate, and there's people that are not very nice to us in that don't deserve to be within our space for that, right? And so, like, I can hide behind, I'm just gonna love everybody and see the good in everybody, right? I can hide behind that and allow people to continue to hurt me or to drag me down or to pull me into a place that doesn't serve me, right? Or I can step into my power and say, this isn't acceptable for me. And a lot of people talking about reparenting work, which I think is really important. It's part of what I do with Inner You. The whole thing really is about reparenting. It's about going in and becoming your inner child's champion. But if you think about if you were raising a child, right? You wouldn't allow people into their lives that are going to hurt them, that aren't going to allow them to step into their power, right? So why is it when we get to adulthood, we think that the kind of enlightenment is seeing the good in everybody and finding love and finding forgiveness, like instantly with people that repeatedly hurt us? For me, if I wouldn't treat a child like it, if I wouldn't allow that for a child, why would I allow that for myself, right? So that's where I think there's this kind of, I don't want to keep using the word toxic because I think it gets overused. So I don't want to use it when it's, but it is this toxic cultured idea in Western culture where we get people to love their family no matter what. Right? We tell people that you should love your parents, right? You should find a way to love them, right? You should find a way to forgive them. I get people all the time commenting on my stuff, right? That say, look, you shouldn't be pushing this. You will get much more freedom if you find a way to love them, right? If you find a way to forgive them. Like, you wouldn't allow that for a child. You wouldn't allow that for a child, right? You wouldn't allow somebody to repeatedly abuse you. And I think, I think this is one of the things that people struggle with. They struggle with the idea that a parent would ever be able to be this abusive emotionally to a child. But I think also it makes them feel a little bit exposed to the toxicity that they allow in their lives. And in some ways I have to apologize a little bit for being overly aggravated with people who comment on my stuff, saying that you need to find love, you need to let these people in your life and you need to find a way to forgive them, right? In some ways I have to apologize for being over aggravated by those people, because I think that some of those people are the people that need to hear this message. And the fact that some people are stepping into their power and actually, not allowing these people to have that impact on their life makes these people feel uncomfortable, because deep down they want that too, but they're not yet able to reach that. And so when I say I have to say sorry, I don't like the word should. It would be useful for me if I took a step back and allowed that. Yeah, and reflected on that when people commented. But on the flip side, I think my audience, the people that look at my content, that engage in my content a lot, really have had enough of thinking about everybody else all of the time, right? I've really had enough of thinking about how it might make other people feel, right? They've had a lifetime of people not looking at their perspective and actually trying to drag them into another perspective. So when I'm quite blunt in the way that I speak, I do that on purpose, because I think people deserve somebody to speak in that blunt way and say, no, enough is enough. Stop making us follow in societal norms that don't fit the experience that we're having. And I want to highlight that further, right, by thinking about, like, giving you an example here. If I said to you, would you allow somebody in your life who repeatedly sexually abused you, right? The answer for everybody, right, from a rational perspective of being able to look at it plainly, right, standing here, would you allow somebody to do that in this space? The answer would be no, right? You wouldn't allow that to happen, right? So then if you ask the next question and you say, okay, maybe they don't sexually abuse you, but they physically abuse you, right, repeatedly. Would you allow them in your life? the answer, rational answer at least, would be no for everybody, I'm pretty sure, right? So then let me ask another question, right? If I said to you, okay, let's just say that they don't sexually abuse you, they don't physically abuse you, but they repeatedly emotionally abuse you all of the time. Would you let that person in your life? I think the answer, again, rationally speaking, for most people, or nearly everyone, the answer would be no. Right? Okay, so if I said, okay, well, let's take this again and say, what if that person didn't sexually abuse you, didn't physically abuse you, but did emotionally abuse you all of the time, but they were your really close friend, right? Would you let them in your life? The answer would be, in most persons' rational answer, would be no. I wouldn't let them in your life. And if I said, okay, well, let's say that they didn't sexually abuse you, they didn't physically abuse you, but they did emotionally abuse you, and they weren't your best friend, but they were actually a family member, right? Would you let them in your life then? And I think rationally most people would say no. And then so let's just take that another step further just quickly and go, they didn't sexually abuse you, they didn't physically abuse you, but they did emotionally abuse you repeatedly all of the time, but they weren't your best friend, they weren't just a family member, they were your mum or dad. Why at that point should the answer change to, oh no, well then I wouldn't cut them out, I'd have to find a way to let them in my life? Why does the answer change? And if anybody can give me a good rational answer about why the answer should change, then let me hear it, and I'll be open to changing my mind. But I don't think anybody can. And I think one of the things that people might say is that, like, they raised you, or, you know, they were the ones that were there for you. And if we're dealing with the type of parents that I'm talking about, then they didn't. They weren't. They didn't do those things. They didn't. And so many people, the audience or the group of people that I'm talking to, have had to raise themselves, are here in spite of the way that they were treated. And so that's, I just want to pick up, I know there's lots of, in and amongst a load of comments in here that I'm ignoring. You are so right, I still can't take that step to cut them out. So let me just talk about that as well for a minute. If you have a toxic parent, and when I say toxic, I'm not going to keep defining it every time, but if you've got one, you know you've got one. This isn't like somebody who's not, you know, who's let me down a bit. I'm a parent. My eldest is 17 this year. I've let her down repeatedly and continue to do so. I think that's part of parenting, right? But she knows that I love her, and she knows that I'm always trying to work, all of them do, yeah, to be better. That's not the same as toxic parents. It's not remotely the same. It's not even close to being the same. And so if you're living with that and you have a toxic parent in your life, even if you've cut them out, right, and put all of the boundaries there and they're not there, they don't exist anymore, right, then they will still have an impact on your life while they are on the planet. They will still have an impact on your life while they are on the planet. And this is why I think we have to be more compassionate for one another and for ourselves, or yourself if you're in that situation, because it isn't easy. I know people online will talk about, you know, drawing a line and put clear boundaries in and just don't let them near you and all of that stuff. But I just don't, I wish it was that simple. I don't think it is. I think it's hard. And I think when people talk about forgiveness and drawing a line and all of that kind of stuff, I think that makes sense and would work, perhaps, or you know, there would be the potential for it to be possible if that parent was gone, as in not here anymore, yeah, had died or passed away. While they're still here, and and an impact after they've passed away, that impact is still there, right? It's still there, but they're not continuing to repeat it, yeah. My dad died when I was 9 years old. He was an alcoholic. When I think about the fact that my dad isn't here anymore, the first thing that I feel is relief. Now, I don't know if my dad was toxic. I'm actually told my dad was a lovely man who alcohol got the better of him. I don't know how true that is, and I don't know, right? I trust the people that tell me that. But what I do know is that if he was still here and drinking all of the time in the way that he was, then I wouldn't be able to process my experiences as a result of his behaviour, as I wouldn't be able to process them in the way that I am processing them now. Why? Because something might happen tomorrow, or I might still be thinking that he's going to knock on the door tonight. Yeah, or if somebody's toxic in my life and I've cut them out and I've stopped the text message and they've sent a letter, then even when they're not doing anything, there's always the fear that they might. And I know what these toxic people do, and if your parent's one of them, I know what they do to you. All of a sudden, out of the blue, just a text message come through. Yeah, you read that text message to anybody else, yeah, and they'll say, well, they're just trying to reach out to you. Maybe you should maybe you should take the olive branch, yeah, because the message is clever. Yeah, it's not, there's no harm in it, but they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, and they very cleverly use these subtle half-truths all of the time. Yeah, and they always make it look like they're reaching out to you, and you're the crazy one, and you're the nasty one. And when you try and get support or seek help or get anybody to kind of understand what you're talking about from this view, they will only ever, nearly always only ever, have sorrow for your parent, and they'll make the parent the victim every time, and they'll make you as the abuser in this case. Abuser is probably the wrong word, but they'll think that you're the one that needs to change, and so it's hard. It's really hard, and I want to bring that back to the question which was originally, or the statement that somebody made in here, which was like, they haven't been able to cut them out yet. Listen, I think you have to do whatever works for you on a daily basis to get round what you're experiencing, because it ain't easy. It's hard daily, regardless of what they're trying to do in any given moment. And listen, one of the things that I've committed to doing this year is stepping more into this, yeah. Which isn't easy, because I get a lot of stick for what I say, and you question it a lot, Get a lot of people telling me all of the time that, you're the reason that families are breaking up, and you're making people, and and you reflect and you think, fuck, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be, maybe I'm going too hard on this and I need to step back, right? And then you hear people, and then you read everybody's experiences, and you're like, nah. I'm not making this up. And then you get into the realms of when you start trying to describe stuff and you use certain terminology, and so people start saying to me, you shouldn't be saying that, and you bring up the word narcissist, and then so people say that's not a behavior, that's a type of person, and then which there's truth in that, and then people say you shouldn't be talking about this, you don't have enough experience and all of that kind of stuff. Let me say this. Forget terminology for a moment. Forget the way that things are described. Forget professionals. I never claim to be anything other than what I am. If you live with a toxic person in your life, be it your parent or anybody else, yeah, then you fucking know what I'm talking about. You know what those people are like, and it's irrelevant what anybody outside wants to think or wants to tell you, because you know. I don't care what you call it. Don't call it a toxic person if you don't want to. Don't use the word narcissistic, right? Use whatever you want, but you know, and everybody knows, and you know what they look like, and you know what it feels like. And so it's hard to step in and talk about that in that truth, because, some of the people that will try and come against me for saying it, some of them are the toxic people, right? There's no denying that, and they're always passive aggressive, and then, they'll always first go for, they won't try and debate or discuss, and I'm always up for those things, by the way, but they won't try and debate or discuss your point. They will go straight for you, right? And they'll start to pull you down, right? And so I know that very clearly when I see that on the comments, when somebody goes straight for my identity and who I am as a person, then I know what they're doing, right? That's different to debate. Now, let me just try and hold thought for the other side a minute. I do also realise my own downfalls in this, in that, I post something and then loads of comments go in, and, sometimes I'll look at them and I read as many of them as I can, and then sometimes I'm too busy to, I'm a little bit too busy to be able to reply, right? But then one comes in that disagrees with me, and it's just a basic disagreement, and I'm straight in and I'm defensive. So I do, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that, and how I need to be sometimes not get defensive, right, and allow discussion. But I also I also know how toxic people work, yeah, And toxic people, right? Toxic people ain't coming on my comments and saying, you're a really nasty word and you're horrible, yeah? Toxic people are going to do this. So this is how you define what we're talking about, yeah? This is how you start to know when you're dealing with somebody a little bit more toxic. Here's what a toxic person normally doesn't do unless they've gone over the edge, right? Here's what they normally don't do. They don't come in and go, you're a prick and you're horrible and you're a disgusting human being, right? That's not where they start. They come in and go, I'm just coming from a place of love and I really want to understand you here. And I totally get why you're doing what you're doing. I'm just concerned about the people that you're hurting. And I'm concerned about you saying these things in the way that you are and the impacts that they might have on people. See, now we're getting into what toxic people do, yeah? Right? Because they want to come under the skin, they want to get to you, but they also want to make sure that if you react to that, and this is reactive abuse, then they can go, whoa, read my comment, I was being nice, it's all love, you know, are you okay? If you can't deal with people disagreeing with you, I'm sorry. Right? You see the difference. And so I become aware of it, and when that happens, yeah, they are trying to manipulate. So when that happens, I do get a little bit more, I embody a bit more of that warrior energy, and I'm like, nah, I ain't having it, and I call them straight out. But sometimes it's better to not engage, you know, particularly because I think the best thing that you can do with these people is not engage whatsoever. Yeah, because that's how they pull you in. Because people always say to me, look, people often ask me advice, do you think I should speak to them? I'm thinking about just letting them know that I'm doing this. What do you think? And I'm like, listen, here's my advice if you're thinking of engaging with a toxic person, be it a parent or anybody else. If your motivation in engaging with them is the hope that a part of them, even a little part, might see your point of view, or might start to understand, or might rationalize what you're saying, if that's why you're saying it to them, don't bother, right? But that doesn't mean that you don't get to say what you want to say to them. So if you want to say something to them because you feel like you have the right to say it and you want to get it off your chest and you want to say it to them, then you should say it to them, right? And just be aware, they're never going to hear it, they're never going to rationalize, right? And you might get the big long barrage of text messages after, yeah? So you've got to be prepared to ignore them. And you have to ignore them, right? Because they'll be very cleverly written, right? And they'll pull you back in, and then you'll start thinking, oh my God, I should never have said it. And then you'll start using your rational brain to go against their vindictive, abusive way, yeah? And you're in. And they got you, and you're in. So my advice is always the same. Why are you doing it? What's the hope? What outcome are you hoping for? And then if you want to say it, say it. But you're going to have to be tough or strong. Yeah, they are the right words. You're going to have to be that afterwards, because you ain't going to be able to engage in nothing that they come back with. Yeah, otherwise they're going to pull you in. And look, one thing that I think is important to say is that, like, people will often try and come at things with science, right? So they'll often come and try and, like, disprove things or discredit things, or say, you know, how can you prove this? And listen, let me tell you this. If you've grown up with it, yeah, or you've experienced it and you've been in any kind of relationship with the person that I'm talking about, yeah, then you know, forget having to prove it rationally, because it ain't rational for a start, yeah? Forget it. If you know, you know. And I'm sorry if there's some people that get caught up and see my content and cut ties with a perfectly loving parent who just made mistakes. I'm sorry if that happens, but that's not who my message is for. And I'm not going to stay quiet through fear of the wrong person hearing the message, because that's not how life works. We live in a collective society. Do you attract toxic partners too? That's usually a pattern if you were raised by toxic patterns. I'm careful of this conversation. I think you become attractive to a toxic person, and I think you can find yourself easily manipulated into a toxic situation if it's what you've always known and what you've grown up in. But I'm careful of the terminology that we use here, because sometimes people take that too far, and it almost becomes a little bit of like victim blaming, like, you know, you're being abused by a toxic person because of you and your actions. And listen, You could have grown up in a perfect environment, in a perfect loving home, and have all your shit together, yeah, and be the most to-do person out there. And if they want to get you, they'll get you, yeah. So I think that's important. But I do think that you might become attractive to them because they'll sense and pick up on your weaknesses. Don't forget, they're highly sensitive too. And then you may get pulled in further before you realize, because it feels very normal and comfortable. But that doesn't mean it's your fault remotely. That's how I'd answer that. Great answer, thank you. Thank you, Amy. I'm going to do one more question, then I'm going to have to jump. Tom, good to see you, my friend. We are outnumbered by the ones not on this journey. We are outnumbered. That's why we got to stick together in community. Silent treatment. Yeah, the silent treatment is a form of abuse. The silent treatment is a strong form of abuse, and that's different to somebody giving themselves a bit of space and time to then come back at you. The silent treatment is the withdrawal of any love or affection to abuse you, right, and to make, to hurt you, which is very different to somebody gathering their thoughts. I worked with an extremely toxic manager for 4 years, made me lose hope in humanity for a bit. It does, right? Because it's a great form of abuse, isn't it? To get you to be able to trust nobody, right? Because if you trust nobody, then where do you go for support? And I would say silent treatment is the worst, particularly if you're like a chronic people pleaser as well, right? And you want to make people happy, and you want them to love you. And so if it's a parent, if you've got a toxic parent who's giving you the silent treatment, right? Which they would have given you when you were younger, right? Which would have taught you that if I want this loving relationship from my parent, then I need to back down from anything that I think, feel or believe in order to be able to be in this loving relationship with them, right? And then they might give me their words and their love and affection again if I change, leave my own body, right, and be what they want me to be. So of course, those people grow up, it makes sense, right, that those people grow up to be chronic people pleasers and think that love is the abandonment of myself in order to meet your needs, yeah? So that's what the silent treatment does to a child, and what does it do to an adult? It does the same fucking thing, really, yeah? If somebody withdraws their love and withdraws their words and stays completely silent, right, it's a form of abuse. It is a form of abuse. And again, every time I talk about that, people throw at me, silence, what's the saying? Be the better person and say nothing at all. I think sometimes that's true. But that's different to the silent treatment. Way different to the silent treatment. And somebody's just talked here, Leah's talked here about ostracized from other family members. Listen, the hardest thing about this is if you've got a toxic family member, then the moment that you start to come out about that toxicity, the moment you start to come forward and start to bring the truth, which is something that toxic people really need to avoid for them to be able to exist in the way that they do, well then, the first thing they're going to do is set about ostracizing you from the family and any community that you had. And that's why I talk extensively about the smear campaign. The smear campaign as being a strong form of abuse. Yeah, a very strong form of abuse, because if you start telling the truth and sort of almost take away their toxicity, yeah, then they're going to set about ostracizing you first from your closest people and then from everybody around you. And they get to abuse you, right, without even needing to interact with you. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to shut this down now, and we'll save it. I'm done. Got to jump. Enjoyed this obviously, like everything else, goes on YouTube, and you can catch it there. I know there's loads more. Drop me the questions and we can pick them up. There'll be loads more, and I'll pick them up as soon as I can. Yeah, thanks everyone.